Before we begin, a gentle note. This piece explores themes that may be sensitive or emotionally challenging, such as manipulation, psychological control, exploitation, and survival in extreme circumstances. While inspired by a well-known literary work, our aim is not to shock or sensationalize, but to open a thoughtful and compassionate space for understanding how real people, across history and in our world today, cope with coercion, trauma, and loss of autonomy. If at any point you feel overwhelmed, please feel free to pause, breathe, or step away. This is a journey into resilience, not despair, and you're not alone in it. Let's move forward with kindness, curiosity, and care.
First published in 1954 by Pauline Riage and Desclose. The story of O explores the intricate psychology of submission, domination, and the systematic erosion of personal autonomy through intense emotional and physical manipulation. Beyond its explicit BDSM narrative, the work vividly portrays how absolute surrender, whether voluntary or coerced, can serve as a mechanism for controlling and exploiting individuals. This makes the story deeply relevant across social, political, and historical contexts. The narrative's adaptation into films over subsequent decades further illustrates its powerful themes in increasingly complex and sinister scenarios. In the 1975 adaptation, the story expands beyond erotic symbolism into metaphors of cartel-like structures reflecting the ruthless exploitation found in organized crime and trafficking networks. Techniques such as isolation, emotional dependency, repeated degradation, punishment, sleep deprivation, forced drugging, ritual humiliation, and repetitive indoctrination echo practices used in brainwashing by extremist groups, cults, and oppressive regimes. The 1984 film, Histoire d'O, Chapter 2 goes even further. It portrays sexual manipulation as a tool of extortion in business, labor, and politics. The film depicts how blackmail, entrapment, and compromising material are used to extract secrets and manipulate powerful figures. This reflects real-world tactics and espionage, where personal vulnerabilities and private data are weaponized to build control through coercion. These adaptations underscore broader phenomena: human operations, political blackmail, psychological warfare. The story of O becomes a chilling metaphor for how deeply human intimacy can be used as a tool of strategic domination. In the story's final act, O's willingness to embrace death, to vanish, to self-sacrifice, parallels the psychological conditioning behind suicide bombings and martyrdom. These extreme outcomes are often the result of trauma, hopelessness, or manipulated loyalty. They remind us that surrender can be weaponized and that survival sometimes comes at the cost of identity, autonomy, and even life itself. By studying the story of O through this expanded lens, we gain insights into how people survive exploitation, whether as trafficked individuals, conscripted soldiers, political pawns, or victims of disaster. This isn't about erotica. It's about empathy, trauma, and resistance. It urges us to understand the mechanics of control, not to replicate them, but to confront and dismantle them wherever they appear.
First published in 1954 by Pauline Riage. The pseudonym of Anne de Clos. The literary world for its stark portrayal of sexual submission and domination.
But beyond its explicit BDSM, narrative lies a more disturbing, universal story. A story of how surrender, whether voluntary or coerced, becomes a mechanism of control emotionally, physically, psychologically.
In Just Jekin's 1975 film adaptation, O's submission transforms into metaphor, reflecting cartel-like systems of organized crime and trafficking.
These systems thrive on ritualized erosion of autonomy, isolation, emotional dependence, forced drugging, sleep, deprivation, repetitive humiliation. They're not fiction. They're documented tools of indoctrination and coercive control.
She's obedient now, broken, in, clean, compliant, ready for market.
Eric Rockchett's Histoire d'Eau, Chapitre 2 goes further, plunging into the world of corporate and political exploitation. Sexual manipulation becomes a weapon used for extortion, compromat, and influence peddling.
Here, seduction isn't about pleasure, it's about leverage.
He thought it was a private affair. I recorded everything. We own his vote now.
This mirrors real-world human intelligence operations, where trust is manufactured and vulnerability harvested.
In war zones and POW camps, surrender becomes strategy. Survivors adapt by submitting, not by choosing.
I held the rifle before I learned to write. You follow orders, or you die.
Whether under command or in captivity, systematic degradation reshapes the mind until obedience feels like survival.
Cult indoctrination works not through force, but through love bombing, isolation, degradation, and rituals that resemble worship.
You're nothing out there, but in here, you belong.
Gradually, identity erodes, and surrender becomes addictive.
Human trafficking networks employ terrifyingly similar methods, breaking identity through drugs, shame, and psychological collapse.
He gave me a new name, then a collar, then a price.
O's journey, fictional as it may be, echoes these lived experiences. Submission not for pleasure, but profit.
In its final act, O faces obliteration. A surrender so complete, it mirrors suicide.
This mirrors psychological warfare in terrorist recruitment and martyrdom operations, where individuals are programmed to die for causes they barely understand.
They said I would be honored, that my suffering would matter. I believed them.
Hopelessness, dependency, glorified sacrifice. When surrender becomes total, the result is not liberation, but annihilation.
So why revisit the story of O, not as erotica, but as psychological and social allegory?
Because understanding how submission can be engineered through trauma, coercion, or survival is essential for protecting human dignity.
Because recognizing these dynamics early can aid in preventing trafficking, radicalization, and manipulation.
And because empathy begins with understanding how identity is dismantled and how healing begins.
O is not just one woman.
She is the silent metaphor for millions across borders, systems, and histories who are told to obey and forget they ever had a choice.
Submission is not always seductive. Sometimes it is survival. Sometimes it is.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. We know the themes we've explored today are difficult, with pain, power, and the complexity of human survival. But through understanding, we find clarity. And through empathy, we move closer to creating a world where control, coercion, and exploitation are recognized and challenged.
If you've been affected by any of the ideas discussed, please take time for yourself. Breathe, reflect. You're not alone.
These stories remind us of our strength, not just our suffering.
Stay curious.